Hi and hello. It's another episode of my tape memories. This is the third episode, but they don't follow any real schedule or storyline, so it doesn't really matter whether this is your first episode or whether you followed the tape memories from the very start. For those who have not watched any of my tape memories episodes so far, the concept here is I still have a lot of old tapes in a really dusty tape box, or actually two boxes. And time again, I just grab one of the old tapes and start recording and have a look at what's on those tapes and try to get down a memory lane here with a more sort of personal comment, not necessarily about the music, but what this tape means to me, or what kind of memories they conjure up. And today's tape looks like this. Again, my handwriting is quite awful, to be honest. But this time around, there's some writing on the tape, because with the last episode, at first it looked that the tape was blank. This one here says, you may be able to read it, it says Pop Museum. And the Pop Museum was a radio show on Austrian radio. So very obviously, the songs on this tape were taped from that very radio show. Looking at the track list, this seems to be the case, at least with most of the songs. Some are, I think, still taped from various CDs, but a lot of the entries on this one indeed are taped from the radio. Now, I think I will do an extra episode on or about the Pop Museum radio show. This episode will deal with something slightly different, but also with the radio and also taping from the radio. Why is that? As I looked through the track list of this tape, especially on the B side, there are a lot of rather old songs that go back to the 1950s and the early 1960s. So I will, as always, I will not talk about each song on this tape. With tape memories, the tapes I grab are actually rather meant to sort of provide a basis and then, go wherever my fancy and my memories will take me. But I read here. Okay, we have on side A, we have interesting stuff by the Steve Miller Band, the Incredible String Band, Fairport Convention. So that's not really 1950s, but on the B side, there are songs like, for instance, Jackie Branson and his Delta Cats with Rocket 88.
You women have heard of jalopies, you've heard the noise they make, but let me introduce my new Rocket 88. Yes, it's straight, just one way. Everybody likes my Rocket 88.
This song features the future abusive husband of Tina Turner and is very often referred to as the first real rock and roll recording in all history. Other things I taped from this radio show here are Thurston Harris and the Sharps with Little Bitty Pretty One. This is quite a catchy tune. And then it goes on with songs like Underwater by the Frogmen or the Sentinels with Exotic. Um, I think this is more kind of exotica meets surf rock, but also this must have been from the early 60s, also all taped from the Pop Museum show. And yeah, reading those titles reminds me of when I was a lot younger, and I'm talking about my grammar school days here. I would actually love listening to classic 1950s rock and roll singles. So I had a friend in primary school who had also a tape filled with old rock and roll classics. I'm talking about Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, a bit of Elvis Presley, but also the Everly Brothers. And he borrowed me the tape, or maybe he made a copy for me. I can't really remember. Um, and this was fantastic for me. So for a while, we would exchange, or we would spend our time listening together to those really old 1950s singles, 2 minutes, 2.5 minute songs, and they were perfect for us. Catchy, short, not too complicated, and of course, um, usually rather fast paced. A little later, I mean, I'm talking about boys at the age of 8 or 9 years old here. A little later, I discovered a radio show that was on German radio because at that time I was living in Germany. And there was a radio show called Professor Bob. Professor Bob was a DJ who would go on to become quite a popular figure in German television. His real name is Götz Alsmann. He's still active, but as a younger guy, and when I was still a kid, he would have this evening show on the radio called Professor Bob, and it was a show that focused on 1950s rock and roll, a bit of swing, hillbilly, but really those old-timey, old-fashioned rock and roll music. And for me, that was like discovering paradise. Whenever I could, I would listen to his show. I think it was once a week. I definitely cannot remember at which day. So I had my little radio in my room and would listen to, I think sometimes even when I was already in bed. The show was a little bit later, at least for an 8-year-old kid. And I would listen to that. And that was when I basically discovered that there were certain radio shows playing on certain days that would play a certain type of music. And I would try to seek them out. Another radio show I remember was called, I think, the Oldie Parade or the Oldie Show. Not the most creative name, but that was also one of my favorites because they would play. Well, what was considered oldies back in the 1980s. So a lot of music from the 1960s up to maybe the early 1970s, like, the Doors, the Rolling Stones, Beatles. So that was also one of my first gateways into the classics from the 1960s. So that was German radio, but a little later I would also discover BFBS.
BFBS. Music, news, information, 24 hours a day.
Where I was living in Germany, we had British troops situated since the end of the Second World War, actually. So it used to be the British sector, and then the troops simply remained as NATO troops. So we would be able to tune into or receive the British Forces Broadcasting Service. And BFBFs always was a little bit hit and miss for me because obviously I didn't understand a single word. I didn't speak English back then. So I was always hoping that they wouldn't talk too much. And if they didn't talk too much, BFBS really was a bit of an alternative world. I mean, German radio, of course, would play hits from the USA and from the UK, as well as German music. But with BFBS, you always got also stuff that you wouldn't necessarily hear on German radio, or not as often. Of course, without remembering or knowing the band's names, I'm pretty certain that BFBS must have been the very first time that I heard bands like, for instance, The Jam or The Clash. Yes, indeed, the British Forces Broadcasting Service would play punk rock. Sometimes I would also try and tape songs from those radio shows. Taping from the radio would become more important and more frequent when I got a little older. But those were the beginnings of discovering music that was not in my parents' collection, but that was music that I enjoyed quite a lot. And it all started, would you believe it, with 1950s rock and roll classics. I'm astonished myself because nowadays I hardly ever listen to any music from the 1950s. It's not that I dislike it, but it's not, to me, it's not the music that really excites me anymore these days. But I remember I was a huge fan of certain rock and roll tracks. And it was also the time, mid-late 80s, of that act called Jive Bunny. We loved this. As kids, we absolutely adored Jive Bunny, and we thought that was the best since, I don't know, sliced bread. Listening to it now, of course, this was a very cheap way of simply mashing together old rock and roll classics. Jive Bunny was a one-hit wonder. I don't even know where they were from, whether this was a one-man project or a real group. Maybe they were from Great Britain or maybe from the Netherlands. And Jive Bunny simply did this swing and rock and roll mix, which was a track that simply put together the hook lines and choruses of famous rock and roll classics with a more modern 1980s dance beat. It actually sounds pretty terrible if you listen to it today, but back then that was a real hit, not only with kids. Maybe you remember it.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
Apart from that, well, maybe atrocity or novelty, obscurity, I remember I was very fond of Tutti Frutti by Little Richard. Great Balls of Fire.
Great Balls of Fire.
Of course, Rock Around the Clock.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on. Join me home.
And Bird Dog by the Everly Brothers.
But when he jokes my honey, he's a dog. His joking ain't so funny. What a go. Johnny is a joker that's trying to steal my baby. The bird dog.
And there was a particular Fats Domino track, and the name of which unfortunately escapes me completely now. But I remember it was also on this tape by my primary school friend, and I enjoyed it quite.
Well, I'm ready, I'm willing, and I'm able to rock and roll all night. I'm ready, I'm willing, and I'm able to rock and roll all night.
I think I never listened to so much classic 1950s rock and roll than in my primary school days. The tapes of those days are long gone now. This, as mentioned, is a tape that I recorded several years later from another radio show called The Pop Museum, and that one deserves another episode all by itself or for itself. If you enjoy these rather unstructured trips down memory lane based on old tapes of mine, stay tuned for more tape memories.